Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Well, hello there. And welcome, new friends, old friends, close by friends, far away friends, all of my friends. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I am your host. My name is Bonnie Sher, and I am here to lead you through the world of celebrity, through the boomer generation, and of course, matters of interest, the type 1 diabetes community. I'd really appreciate it if you would share your thoughts, ask your questions. You can call into the studio right here at area code 323-843-2826. So this will be a very interesting show, and I bet you're going to have a lot of questions. But before I get the show on the road, I would like to acknowledge jazz great Wayne Cobham for my super duper hero theme song. Thanks, Wayne. And also, I'd like to thank Corey Bowen for providing me with the jewelry, which he allows me to wear in exchange for this promotional message. You can find Corey on Etsy. It's under Crown and Anchor Jewels. If you have any difficulty finding him, write to me, Bonnie at BonnieShare.com, and I'll hook you guys up. Now, when we come back, and we will be back, cardiologist, this is Dr. Nicholas DePace. He's boarded in everything, 47 things, but he's here today to talk to us about treatment of autonomic dysfunctions. Is that what I meant? That's what I meant. I thought so. So we'll be right back.
Your life story is more than the things you do. It's a story built on the moments you make today and the impact you have on others. How big is your story going to be? Live your legend.
And we're back. Welcome. I'd like to introduce you all now to Dr. Nicholas DePace, who is a specialist in non-interventional cardiology and also a specialist in the treatment of autonomic functions. In my case, dysfunctions, but there we go. So welcome, Dr. DePace. Thanks for being back. I really appreciate you taking more time for me. You opened up my mind to so much, and I got a lot of mail from viewer listeners telling me how much they appreciated hearing you because, as I said to you right before we went on air, it's very difficult I find, or I have found, and I live in Los Angeles, California. I mean, this is a pretty big town. Anybody who really knows, I mean, yeah, they know. I mean, you can look up in the PDR and see what medications are available, but that isn't necessarily. I mean, it seems like it isn't. I don't want personally leave it with the learn by doing method. I want somebody to say to me, you know, can well, let's first, for people who don't either have type 1 or have not faced any of these functions that we're talking about, could you share with our audience what the autonomic nervous system is?
The autonomic nervous system is the portion of the nervous system that controls the things that you don't normally think about: breathing, digestion, your heart beating, your respirations, urinating to some degree, and many of the organ functions, including even sweating from sweat glands. These are nerves, very small nerves called type C fibers that leave the spinal cord or other areas of the nervous system and innervate the organs and cause opposing effects. If they're parasympathetics, they slow things down usually, and if they're sympathetics, they speed things up. Think of parasympathetic system as the brakes and sympathetic as the accelerator of a car, and therefore you have to have a balance, like a one-to-one balance. You want brakes and accelerator to be in balance. Autonomic dysfunction is when this balance is disrupted. Too much brakes are on, chronic fatigue, for example, migraines, fibromyalgia, muscle aches, or if the sympathetics are revved up too much accelerator is on, fast heartbeats and fainting episodes when you stand and accelerated type things like that. So in diabetics, they are predisposed very much at a very early age, usually 20 years earlier than people that are not diabetics, to disruption of these nerve impulses in these small autonomic nerves.
Well, you just answered another question, so I don't have to answer that. And my question was, is this a situation which can befall somebody who's not a diabetic? And it sounds like yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We see it in as one ages, their autonomic nervous system sort of deteriorates, and we see that it's an aging process. But diabetics more rapidly and much earlier, and typically diabetics, for example, they stand up, their blood pressure can drop or their heart rate can race, and that's an early indication. If a diabetic comes in and their heart rate's over 100, I have to be suspicious that they are having some dysfunction in their autonomics early. Just like diabetics get peripheral neuropathy with their feet burn or their feet hurt, they can get this in the autonomics also.
And is this something that has been evident for a long time? I mean, to tell the truth, until it happened to me, I had no idea it was even on the menu. You know, and something else we were talking about. I mean, if you have a kidney problem, you know to see a nephrologist. But I can't find anything in the Yellow Pages that talks about, except you, doctors who treat this. So if you're noting any of the symptoms which you just spoke about, who's the first person to see?
Well, you have to start with your family doctor because they usually write the referrals and they know who the specialists are that have some expertise in autonomic dysfunction. If you're fainting a lot, if you're getting brain fog, if you're tired constantly during the day, you're getting migraines all the time, there's a good chance you have this problem. If you have too much constipation, too much diarrhea, if you can't eat a lot of food and you get full real easy and you throw up, what we call gastroparesis, these are all problems with autonomics. If you sweat too much, hyperhidrosis. So you see the family doctor and say, I'm having a lot of these symptoms. And one thing it leads to another. You may be standing up and having a lot of brain fog and dizziness, and you have to lay down a lot. This is called orthostatic intolerance. And he will say we should look at an autonomic specialist. Now, It could be a neurologist, it could be a cardiologist, or it could be an endocrinologist. One of those three fields usually has expertise in it. And if you type it in, autonomic dysfunction in your area, oftentimes a few names will come up. And these are people that have been experienced in treating individuals with a lot of these symptoms. Now, you could do it yourself, or your family doctor could recommend someone. There is no such thing as a trained autonomic specialist, and that's all they do. They're usually a subspecialist of either neurology, endocrinology, or cardiology, and probably only 5 or 10% of those subspecialty personnel will know enough about autonomics to treat people.
I see. Yeah, well, I understand that. Is it? Excuse me. I just my tongue just stopped working. I don't know. I fed it. I paid it. It didn't want to work.
See, autonomic dysfunction, interestingly, happens when you don't think about what's going on. You could stand up abruptly and all of a sudden you feel woozy or dizzy and you got to sit down. You feel like you're going to faint, or you could get problems with even depression. Could be too much vagal tone. So there's a lot of manifestations, and we have questionnaires. But if a doctor comes up to you and says, we don't know what's wrong with you, all your symptoms just don't add up to one disease problem, you should say, could I have dysfunction of my autonomic nervous system? And let them look at that. A lot of times people are tabbed having anxiety, panic syndromes, anxiety attacks. They're mislabeled when in fact they're having misfiring of these nerve fibers in their autonomic nervous system. And it's treatable. It's diagnosed, and it's treatable with various medicines and with therapies.
Can it get better?
It can get better. It can go into remission, and it can be slowed down from progressing. All those things are important. We use antioxidant therapies for halting the progression of it. And we also try to balance the brakes and the accelerator of the car, get them balanced so that there's less wear and tear in the organ systems. We want to balance the autonomic nervous system, and we can do testing and give medicines to try and balance it. Just like you lower your blood pressure, or just like you lower your cholesterol, or try to raise your HDL cholesterol when you're exercising, things like that. The way you try to lower your sugar when you're diabetic, or hemoglobin 1AC. Well, we like to try to get the ratio of the parasympathetic, or the brakes to the sympathetic, or the accelerator close to 1, so we can titrate for that. So it's like anything else. There's a numerical value you could go for if you have certain testing data. Now, a lot of doctors don't have the equipment, and they go by the patient's symptoms, and that's fine too. If at least if you have an idea and you've done some testing in the past to try and identify where the problem is.
You know what? We need to take a break right here. Please hold your thought right there, Dr. DePace, and we'll be right back. Y'all, we'll be right back.
You have plans, moments you're looking forward to. What if they were stolen from you by Alzheimer's? This cruel disease costs Americans more than $170 billion a year and could cripple Medicare in the near future. The Alzheimer's Association is taking action and has been a part of every major advancement. But we won't rest until we have a cure. You have plans. Help the Alzheimer's Association protect them. Act now. Go to alz.org.
You know, farmers get to use that drop of rain before anybody else does. But in doing so, we have a responsibility to make sure when that water, if it does leave our farm, leaves it such a way that it doesn't affect people downstream. You know, we live in a system. You know, the things I do affect people downstream, and everybody along the way has an impact on that. And I guess as a farmer, you know, I feel it's important for me to be aware of that and to do the things I can do to protect that water.
Welcome back. You are tuned into the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. We have the pleasure of speaking today with Dr. Nicholas DePace. And so if you have questions, you know, join the conversation. Here's the number here one more time. Area code 323-843-2826. I know sometimes it's hard to get through, but keep trying because we want to take your questions and answer them for you. So now let's go back. Dr. Tapachi, can you also explain? Well, it's actually self-explanatory. I know. I'm going to try that all over again. I'm telling you, my mouth just isn't working properly today. I wonder if that's autonomic too. Anyway, I was reading that you are a non-interventionist cardiologist. Can you tell me a little about that? I mean, obviously there are things, not obviously. I will let you answer the question.
Yeah, well, non-interventionist means we don't like to poke catheters and wires and needles inside the body, which are invasive. We like to do things non-invasive, and we like to risk stratify or risk profile patients with various cardiac complaints, and do non-invasive testing where we don't use inject dye into the body or insert devices in the body, if possible, and treat them with lifestyle changes and pharmacologically. For example, chest pain syndrome. Not everybody with chest pains needs a cardiac catheterization. Once you do that, you could open up a Pandora's box, and then they reflexively start putting stents in. What you like to do is see what their exercise capacity is, see what their functional capacity is, see what their physiology is. And if that's abnormal, then we go look at the anatomy with a coronary angiogram. So non-invasive means we use a lot of ultrasound, a lot of nuclear cardiology, and even a lot of electrocardiography and Holter monitoring. And even with the autonomic nervous system, we do non-invasive testing where we don't put wires or catheters in the arteries and veins. We could do it very easily with simple electrodes on the body and measure sweat or measure how your heart rate or blood pressure performs in different positions. Get this information and then apply therapy to patients without putting them in a hospital and having to subject them to potentially more radiation, more dye loads, iodine, and catheters going in the body when possible.
So it's more about diagnosis than treatment.
Well, it's diagnosis and treatment, where the diagnosis does not require invading the body, and the treatment doesn't require invading the body. Like invading the body means surgery or putting stents or pacemakers.
Okay, well, here's a question. What if there has been a heart attack and the cardiac catheter lab says that the patient's already been bypassed? This is years after that. What happens when you can't put a stent in?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we see arteries blocked completely, let's say, and you can't really get the stent in right away, or there may be an artery too far away to reach to put a stent in, or it may be too small, in which case we don't put the stents in. We treat them with aggressive medical therapy. We call this optimal medical therapy, OMT, and that requires cholesterol-lowering agents to thin the blood so the platelets don't make the blood clot so easy, and of course agents that may lower the heart rate or the blood pressure, and agents that may reduce a part of the autonomic system called the renin-angiotensin system, agents that can reduce that, so we keep the blood pressure and heart rate nice and normal. And in cases where you can't put a stent in and the artery has a problem, either completely blocked or the artery can't be reached or the artery's too small, you don't put it in, but you resort to optimal medical therapy. Now, there's other indications where they can't put stents in, and the amount of blood supply to a certain area of the heart is really severe. In those cases, if you can't put a stent in and there's a lot of severe circulation problem in the heart, sometimes we have to go to a drastic thing called a coronary artery bypass surgery. We like to use the option of medicines before we go to bypass surgery if you can't stent vessels, but it depends on each situation. If a person's very sick, has a lot of lack of blood supply, has a very bad stress test, the heart muscle's weak, sometimes you have to go to the bypass procedure. Now, I'm talking generically, everything is individual, but there are options. we like to lean towards the conservative, non-invasive options when possible, if everything is equal. I'd rather treat a patient medically, lifestyle changes, exercise, and so forth, rather than open them up and do a bypass, especially if you can't put a stent in. But if it depends on the circumstance, if that's allowable.
I just couldn't figure out where they would go from there. That's why I asked my friendly doctor. Thank you,
This
sir.
is a good question. This was a great question. This is a tremendous question that was asked.
Well, every now and again I come up with one, Doctor. Dr. DePace, thank you so much for visiting with us again. What can I tell you? If I didn't live so far away, you would be my go-to cardiologist. But
well, it's
for
only
now,
a phone call away.
You're a kind man and a brilliant one. Dr. DePace, you take good care of yourself, and thank you so much. Before I let you go there, if any of our viewers or listeners would like to follow you, do you have a website? I know you've written I know you've written books on this. How can my people follow you and learn more from you?
There's two things. They can visit our website, Franklin Cardiovascular, is our website, and our Facebook is Nicholas DePace, MD.
I think,
Facebook.
Isn't there an L in there?
I don't know. Is there an L in there? I don't think so. No, my name has a middle initial L, but we don't use L. Nicholas DePace, MD for the Facebook. And it's a very academic center, and the Franklin Cardiovascular is the website.com.
Okay, terrific.
Thank you for considering us, and we very much enjoy sharing our knowledge and our expertise.
It's so important for everybody, diabetic or not, which is why, people are very used to me talking about issues that are type 1 issues. But this is something, it maybe helps to be a T1, but you don't have to be a T1. And I think you all should know about this information, too, for you, for your loved ones. You can't have too much information. You just can't. And with somebody like Dr. DePace here to explain it and offer some insight, we're a lucky group. So you all take care, Dr. DePace. You take care. I'll take care. And I'll see y'all later. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
As we go to break, I'd like to acknowledge the important work of the Diabetes Research Institute and encourage you to please support their efforts. You can visit them online at diabetesresearch.org. Song of the Week is coming up next, which is Hooray for Love by our dearly recently departed Wesley Whitfield. Take it away.
Type 1 diabetes can be living in anyone.
Type 1 diabetes is when your pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It's not caused by your diet. It's not caused by anything you did.
Type 1 diabetes can be very serious.
Blindness, amputation.
Learn more about type 1 diabetes.
Help support JDRF finding a cure.
T1D looks like my brother.
T1D looks like a friend.
Type 1 diabetes looks like me.
You get up and cheer a big parade. Pay your dough to hear Puccini played. Praise a movie star or yell about the spring. I will try and save my little voice when I start to rave about my choice. I'll stand up and if you're near me, you will hear me sing. Hooray for love, I'm having fun, look what it's done to me. I'm so happy all the day, hooray for love. My head is hot, my hands are not, I've got no dignity. That's the reason why I say hooray for love. I was sad and gloomy, very hard to please. Your kiss did something to me. Now I'm singing while I'm swinging on a flying trapeze. Hooray for love, I was a tiger, now I'm like a dove. If it makes me feel that way, hooray for love. Hooray for love, I'm having fun. Look what it's done to me. I'm so happy all the day. Hooray for love. My head is hot, my hands are not. I've got no dignity. That's the reason why I say hooray for love. I was sad and gloomy, very hard to please. Your kiss did something to me, and now I'm singing, swinging, flying trapeze. Hooray for love, I was a tiger, now I'm like a dove. If it makes me feel that way, hooray, hooray, hooray for love.
And we're back. Well, welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. My co-host for this segment is Karen Rose Tank, a member of the T1D community from the great state of New Jersey. Welcome, Karen.
Hello. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, everybody.
Hey, hi. Karen, you've been living with T1D for quite a while as well. Might you share your story with us?
Sure. It's been 22 years, and I was actually diagnosed on Christmas Eve. So every Christmas Eve now, it's a little bittersweet. So I will say I was walking around with the disease for a good 3 months with all the classic symptoms before I knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. What triggered it to come on was I was in a car accident, and I believe the physical trauma of the car accident shifted whatever was kind of brewing in me. I think it was like a tipping point, I guess is what we'll call it. And then I wound up with all kinds of symptoms like blurry eyes, and I went to an eye doctor, and he gave me a prescription for glasses. And here I was 39 years old, and I'd never worn glasses, and he just wrote me the script, didn't ask any questions. That should have been the first place where somebody could have diagnosed me. Then I got excessively thirsty, but I thought, this happened in September. I was, the air is dry, the heat's on, so of course everybody.
We can always find a reason,
right?
Because who would ever think I'm sorry for interrupting.
Right. You don't, you just kind of deal with things. At the time, I had 2 young children, 2 boys, and a full-time job and a commute. And so my life was completely full, and things
there was
were
no
starting
time
to.
for this. I understand that.
Yeah, things were going on, and I didn't have time for it. So I just kept moving forward. And I was getting up during the night to use the bathroom a lot. And well, of course, that was because I was drinking a lot because it was the fall. Then I became very lethargic. So I put my kids down to bed around 8 o'clock, and I would just fall asleep in the bed with them. So I'm like, yes, but isn't every working mom with kids exhausted by 8 o'clock at night? Yeah. But then the real telltale sign was when I started losing weight between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, but my jeans are fitting better and I'm not going to complain. Maybe my exercise, is really kicking in. I was using a Nordic track at the time. Remember those things where you kind of like an indoor skier machine?
I remember seeing them.
Yeah. This was 1996. Okay. And so I wound up losing weight. I lost, turns out, 15 pounds, and I was feeling good in my clothes. But what happened is the night I was diagnosed, I had such bad thirst that I was drinking everything in sight and I could not quench the thirst. And we were visiting my parents in Florida, and my mother finally said, there's something wrong with you. She said, call your sister. So my older sister is an internist and a rheumatologist physician. Mm-hmm. And even though I had seen her at Thanksgiving, you never tell people all the things that are happening in a row. So I started listing all my symptoms. She said, oh my God, you have diabetes. And I'm like, what do you mean I have diabetes? You have diabetes? Like, I didn't know, there's no family history, nothing. So she said, get to the hospital right away. So luckily we left our kids with my parents, and my husband and I went over to the hospital. I was in Palm Beach County, Florida, and guess what? A lot of people there have diabetes. So they quickly took my blood sugar, and it was 820. And the nurses started freaking out. So for people that don't know, a normal blood sugar is around 80 to 100. I was 800. And the nurses couldn't believe I was walking and talking and that I wasn't in a coma.
Clearly, they weren't diabetics themselves, because we all know how terrifying for a new diabetic. And of course, when you see somebody go at you, I mean, it does give you pause.
Exactly, right. And they tried to find a doctor, but there was nobody around, and so they were frantic.
Because they were all eating turkey.
Well, because the doctor has to write the order for the insulin. The nurses just could not give me a shot of insulin. So, and this was Christmas Eve, right? So, but there was somebody on call. And, and then I spent the next couple days in the hospital, and that was the beginning of my new life.
It is a life, isn't it? It is a life. Well, okay, let me ask you this then, like I ask all of my T1 co-hosts. What issues would you like to bring to our community today?
Okay, well, you mentioned that to me, and of course, for me, there's not one issue. I tried to come up with my top 3, okay?
Okay.
So as people that know me know, I could talk about this all day long. It's become a passion of mine to support people in the diabetes community.
So important.
So one of the early things I learned is, and this was a good couple of years into my diabetes and learning how to live with it, was that diabetes does not define who I am. So I might have diabetes, it's a condition, a disease, whatever you want to call it. but it does not define who I am. So what that means is originally I thought I was walking around with like a big D over my head. And, I thought everybody knew I'm a diabetic. And through a lot of yoga and meditation and support, I came to realize that I'm the same person I was before I was diagnosed. I'm still Karen, and I still have the same interests, the same smile, and the same passions. It's just that I have another thing I need to deal with now. So I don't know if for other people that is relevant, that you are the same person. You're the same beautiful soul that you were before your diagnosis, and you just kind of hang on to that as you move through the process. So that's number one. Number two is also sort of halfway into my life with diabetes. I discovered this concept of low carb eating. So it's not no carb. It's just taking out things of my diet that are heavily high carbohydrate or very dense carbohydrates that quickly spike blood sugar or keep your blood sugar up for a really long time. And as a result, you have to take
what you just said is very interesting to me, because I'm not sure that everybody knows that. I mean, yes, obviously we know a heavy carb count is going to up the glucose, but that bridge into how long now, they don't all come down at the same time. You can take the same amount of insulin, but that I have not heard discussed very much, and I'm delighted that you're bringing that up now. I knew I had a good question for you, Karen.
Okay.
And you'd be the one to answer it.
Yeah, so the thing is, there's research that shows, and you can always do your own little test on your own body with a blood sugar meter or a continuous glucose monitor. And if you eat 15 carbohydrates of 15 grams of carbohydrate, you can watch your blood sugar rise. But if you eat 30 grams of carbohydrate, your blood sugar will rise higher, and it will take longer for it to come down. So the idea that, if you had 15 grams of carbohydrate, that's like a slice of bread or a half a cup of maybe some berries or half an apple, or depending on the size of the apple. Your body can handle that, but it gets much, much more difficult. You have to take a lot of insulin to actually bring it back down. So it's something also called the law of small numbers, and I didn't coin this. This is Dr. Richard Bernstein,
yes,
who is an endocrinologist, and back when I learned about him in the late 90s, my doctors, I would tell my endocrinologists about him, and they said, "Oh, he's a quack." And now, his concept of low carb eating and the law of small numbers is what everybody is learning about. So it's just interesting how he was sort of ahead of his time.
Well, I don't know that we're all just learning about it. I think people kind of got off the track. I remember when I was first diagnosed, there was none of this, if you want to have more carbs, just take more insulin. No.
Right. That's what I was
just
told.
Didn't have it. My dating life consisted of a green salad and 0-calorie dressing. And I think that people have gotten, hey, we can like fudge this a little bit. But you know what? You don't fudge anything. I mean,
what's interesting is that, what I love and what I share with people is how to make substitutes for all the foods that you love and want to eat without the flour and the processed carbohydrates. So I can make a mug out of flax meal and a muffin that you make actually in a mug out of flax
So
meal
it's
and
a
almond
mug
meal.
fun.
And you just microwave it, and it's phenomenal.
Well, I may have to catch up with you on that one. That sounds
yeah,
good.
that's on my website. We'll talk about that at the end. And there's low-carb noodles that you can buy that are basically made out of fiber, something called miracle noodles. And they are a miracle. There are some great pancake recipes out there that a lot of us have been sharing on Facebook that are made with almond meal or
I've been
eggs
seeing
and
those.
flax meal. Really fantastic. Cakes. I had a cake at a meeting last night called an oopsie cake. And that a friend of mine has made.
It may have been delicious, but we're going to have to do something about this nameology. An oopsie cake? To me, that sounds like a gaseous. I'm sorry.
The reason it's called oopsie is because oopsie, it's low carb, but it's also delicious.
Oh, okay. Listen,
that's the oopsie part.
I want to get to one more thing. You have so much information. And I would love to do an entire show with you, but I can't.
Okay.
But what I'd like to do,
do I have time for my third thing?
Well, let me tell you what I want to. Everybody in here is saying no, but let me tell you what I do want to make sure that I say no. The most important. Well, not the most important. But in terms of following you and why I personally think it's so important is for the work that you do. You have a website, rosehealthcoaching.com. I highly recommend that our viewers, listeners, take a look at that. And that you have a business called Rose Health. Oh, look who's there. It's Rose Health Coaching. Jarvie, you are the best. I have the
And that's what I was going to share. That's my third thing, is that diabetes is really hard to do alone.
I told you we're sisters already. See, I knew that.
Absolutely. And so I highly recommend, and I'm a big fan of support groups. I run a group here in Princeton, New Jersey for Diabetes Sisters.
It's an excellent program. Well,
Diabetes Sisters is phenomenal. If you're a woman with diabetes, we're all over the country. And there's a great website, diabetessisters.org, and there's local meetups all around the country. It's phenomenal. Health coaching is another way of connecting to work this through with somebody, because it's really hard to do by yourself. And then, of course, there's also the online community. There's lots out there on Facebook. And,
isn't that the truth? And I'm right with you, Karen. I recommend entering those groups on Facebook, joining the group, as it were. There's a lot of information. And as we know, it takes a one to know a one.
Exactly.
Why reinvent the wheel? I mean, the information. I mean, I think I told you for the first 15 years of my diabetes, I didn't know another diabetic. Finally, I met one.
I know.
And then, because it's somebody else, it's
Nobody
no longer
understands
somebody
you.
else's story. It's your story, and you're reading it or you're listening to it. And all of a sudden, you're not so alone.
Right. And I really felt the reason I went into health coaching, it was actually my third career, was I was not necessarily getting the support I needed from the traditional endocrinology community. And they were telling me what to do, but not actually helping me do it and incorporate these things into my life.
No,
so
that wasn't their job at that point, and they didn't recognize the need. Again, it takes a while. I mean, I even said this to my endo. I said, arguably, you're the finest endocrinologist in the country. But one thing you're never going to be is a type 1. So I know how I feel. Let me explain it to you.
Exactly.
Anyway, we do have to let you go now.
Yeah. Okay.
Love to talk more. We'll be in touch.
Wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a pleasure for me to have this conversation. And,
Same here, Bonnie. Great to get to know you.
Karen, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. You take good care.
Okay.
You know, if any of our fellow type 1s would like to, quote, sit in that co-host chair, it's really very simple. Write to me. Bonnie at bonniesher.com. We'll get in touch with you. We'll find a date that works for both of us, and we'll bring you in, or like Karen did today, we can do it by Skype if you're not local here. And that's what we look to do. So, next up, we have Boomer News, which today is about why you need to be tested for Hep C, and plenty of views from my soapbox, and I'm back in 60 seconds.
I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a social worker. When I found out that I had hepatitis C, I was a single mother, and I was absolutely terrified.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, estimates there are close to 3 million baby boomers infected with hepatitis C. Because there can be no symptoms for decades, most don't even know it. But if detected in time, Hep C can be cured, and the treatment is simple.
Today I feel great. I'm a healthy 65-year-old. I bike to work. I go to the gym, and I've cleared the virus.
The CDC is urging everybody born between 1945 and 1965 to get tested. It's an easy one-time blood test that may be covered by insurance.
I got a disease that could have killed me, but I saved my own life by getting tested.
Don't wait. Ask your doctor about getting tested for Hep C, because knowing is everything.
And today's Boomer News comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, and it is entitled Impact When Baby Boomers Retire.
The decision to retire is one of the most important personal financial decisions anyone can make. Well, it turns out that it also has a profound macroeconomic impact that we are only now beginning to appreciate. Economists have known for a long time that as the U.S. population ages, it'll tend to slow down economic growth just because we'll have a smaller workforce as a result. But there's new evidence that suggests there's another impact on the economy that's potentially even more important. Because older workers tend to be the most knowledgeable and the most experienced, when they retire, that hurts the productivity of everybody left behind. And that drags on the economy through productivity growth. These findings come from a new economic research paper that just came out in the last week. The economists looked at all 50 states, they looked at the ones that aged faster, and they found that in those states, economic growth slowed more. About a third of the slowdown was because their workforce wasn't growing as quickly, but the rest of it was because the remaining workers just weren't as productive. You know, this kind of makes sense. Older workers aren't just the ones who are most experienced and capable, they also tend to make the people around them more capable and more confident and knowledgeable about how to do their jobs. If you look around the country right now, there are employers from coast to coast grappling with the fact that some of their most experienced employees are now coming up on retirement, and they're very worried about how to replace them. There's a lot of sort of tribal knowledge that you acquire on the job that you cannot simply teach in college. The country as a whole needs to come to grips with this, because if it doesn't, it's facing a double whammy from the aging of the population. This, I think, adds an extra impetus to a lot of the discussion now that we should do more to extend retirement ages, both in private pensions and in Social Security.
And now to my soapbox. I like my soapbox. My soapbox is basically my shout-outs are to people that I feel deserve congratulations, and my shout-downs are to those, well, who aren't going to get any congratulations from me. In the meantime, my big shout-out today is to Team USA. The games have been remarkable, and it just makes me feel proud. So yay, Team USA. Now, my shout down is to a company called Quincy Bioscience, who boasts of their supplement called prevention and its ability to improve memory and create a sharper, clearer mind. Well, they've never been able to prove their claims or even try to substantiate them. They've been warned multiple times by the FDA, and yet they maintain an aggressive advertising campaign. You'll see them on back covers of magazines and all over the television. Just because they say it can be done, that doesn't mean they can. Be very careful with supplements, and especially this one. And it's called Prevagen. Now, before we say goodbye, I'd like to thank my guests this week, Dr. Nicholas DePace and Karen Rose Tank. Thank you both so much for being with us. And that's my show this week. And apparently the amount of air I have left. I know I'll return next week. I hope you'll return next week too for another 50 minutes of celebrity, the boomer life, and people who are living with type 1 diabetes. Until then, please visit BonnieSher.com. Follow the number 1 Bonnie Sher on Twitter. And please like the Bonnie Sings Lena Facebook fan page. Many of you are aware of the special role that Sammy Davis Jr. played in my life. He was my mentor, and he was my lifelong friend. And I like to end my shows each week with sort of a wink and a nod and sort of Carol Burnett, but I can't get to my ears, so I wink and I nod. And this one's for you, Mr. D. Have a great week. See you next week.